Hey guys, welcome back to the Prehistoric Life Podcast, and today we're back with another interview with the Daily Dino Guy. Would you like to introduce yourself a little more than that?
Yeah, my name is Evan Jevnikar. I go by the Daily Dino Guy on the internet. But I have a master's degree in paleontology. I got my bachelor's at the University of Kansas, moved over to North Carolina State University where I got my master's, and in my thesis I studied the growth of Tarbosaurus, which is it's the sister taxon to T-Rex, so a really close cousin. But yeah, I kind of dug up things all over the Southwest, like Utah, New Mexico, Montana, and yeah, pretty much
Have
it.
you, have you ever gone out of North America to?
No, I really wanted to. For my master's thesis, because I was studying Tarbosaurus, that those guys are from Mongolia, and that was originally going to be a part of my thesis. I was get to go over there for a month, live in Mongolia, and get to study these things. But it was literally right before the pandemic, so
Yeah.
it kind of just like threw a wrench into everything. We had to get creative on how to get those specimens over to North America, but yeah, and then once the pandemic was going to be over, we are going to plan and try and do something in Mongolia, like an expedition, but it just didn't work out as far as like the timing and stuff.
That's not, that really sucks.
But I'm holding on to that. Maybe one of these days I'll get to go back over to Mongolia.
Bucket list kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I guess the basic question that I guess now I didn't start off with, but I usually start off with that everybody usually wants to ask is, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh my gosh, it's like such a hard question because I feel like there's so many awesome dinosaurs for so many different reasons, and I feel like I got a bunch of different answers. Um, I feel like I'm kind of biased because I did study Tarbosaurus, and it's like so closely related to T Rex that I just got like a personal connection to it. But so Tarbosaurus, Pachyrhinosaurus is also a really cool one, such a
I
really
love
interesting
Pachyrhinosaurus.
stegosaur. Yeah. Also, like I feel like Megaraptors don't get like a lot of hype. I feel like they're kind of underrated. I feel like they're pretty cool.
It is one of those questions where it's very limiting because
Hmm.
it's because I could sit here and go through every other type. Like, what's your favorite sauropod? What's your favorite Pachycephalosauri? What's your favorite Stegosaurus? What's your favorite whatever? And we'd be here for hours just going through all of them. But Tarbosaurus and Pachyrhinosaurus and Megaraptor, those are some very, very beautiful picks. I mean,
I'm a big fan of like the big scary kind of dinosaurs, like with all the teeth and claws. So like more teeth and claws probably that's going to be higher up on my list.
so there you go, loaded. You saw you actually voted in this. This is why the Jurassic Legacy is Pachyrhinosaurus.
I love it. I think it's great.
I got to go to Alaska, and in like a museum there they had a, I don't think it was Pachyrhinosaurus, but it looks similar in nose structure, and I'm blanking on the name. But it
Might have
was
been like Ankylosaurus, Ionosaurus, one of those. They're kind of closely related.
I posted it somewhere on my Instagram, but I don't feel like scrolling for 8 hours and trying to
Yeah.
in the middle of an interview. But it was a very, they were found like very far north in Alaska too, which is down to like Canada, like the bottom border with Canada. So that's a very unique polar dinosaur.
Yeah, I always I'm interested with those polar dinosaurs. There's not a lot of info on them, but they're really cool. Have you
And
read? There's this book about I think it was like dinosaurs under the northern lights, and it kind of talked about like the limited research that we know in there.
that is, I haven't read that book specifically, but that is, there's a lot there to think that during a time where there was Pangea or possibly lower water levels or something, maybe that connection between Russia and Canada or Alaska, it's not out of the question. Pterosaurs were everywhere. I mean,
Yeah,
and I mean, even recently, the Nucosaurus from Alaska, that polar bear T-Rex, if you will. But they're very fascinating creatures. It's like every corner of the earth you can find something,
Yeah, it
except
is
for the
really interesting.
Philippines.
Yeah, we're kind of doing a lot of research over in there. Like Southeast Asia is trying to get like a lot more research, but they're finding really interesting stuff. Like I know like they've got a lot of Spinosaur material out of there. Um, just finding a lot of really interesting stuff. Maybe some Carcharodontosaurs or something, some type of big toothy theropod.
And one of the most beautiful dinosaurs, Krylophosaurus,
Oh my gosh, I love
down
that.
in
Yeah.
Antarctica. Like, I want to know the thought process of the paleontologists that went to Antarctica. They like found
No,
a rock and they're like, we could find something in that.
yeah, it's so crazy. I don't know what came first, but I know they found ferns over there, and if that's what precluded that, if they found the ferns first, then they probably were like, oh, there's probably some other crazy stuff here. But yeah, that's crazy to just be like, I'm just gonna go to Antarctica and look for dinosaurs.
That it's a very
They probably
unique,
thought it was crazy.
it's a very unique expedition.
Yeah,
And there was a sauropod too that was found in Antarctica, if I'm not mistaken.
I think there was. I don't know a whole lot to come out of that area, but I know they've found a decent amount. And that's also at that time was connected to Australia. So there probably was, a lot of sauropods from Australia. So there probably was a decent amount of sauropods that lived with in Antarctica at the time too.
They won't give me the name, will they? Oh, yeah, I seriously should learn Latin. Ignacio. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna butcher this name. So for everybody watching, you can listen to me butcher this name. Ignacio Serda?
Ignacio Cerde from the National University of from Argentina. Okay, so they found some fossils. Yeah.
Yeah. And the easiest thing to do is just this. We can get. Okay, I guess not.
That must be the paleontologist that found it.
Yeah, it must be named after.
Oh, now we're seeing something.
Oh, that looks uh like a or not sauropod.
Like a prosauropod, Mossospondylus kind of dinosaur.
This is where knowing the lineage helps a lot. That right there is just an Amargasaurus.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my computer being slow then, I guess. But it does seem like a very unique creature to come out of Antarctica. And of course, during that time it was warmer. Antarctica wasn't covered in ice, so
Yeah.
but
Yeah, there's this really cool resource that I use to like kind of check up on what the environments are. It's called climatearchive.org. It's really cool if you haven't heard about it.
I'll have to
You can go
definitely
to
check
it.
that out.
Yeah, it is like pretty bulky for a website, so like I feel like my computer's gonna take off every time I go to that website, but it can run like it can get you all the kinds of paleoclimate data for pretty much anywhere in the planet at any time. So it's really cool. So you can go to like Antarctica and you can see what it was like throughout the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous at certain time, like whatever millions of years.
And that is a very unique resource to have because that takes a lot of, searching.
Mm-hmm.
Because
The website, if I remember, oh, go ahead.
you don't just find like a block of heat. That's not like a thing you find. They can't just. Well, they can make estimates off of plants and the type of species that is there.
Mm-hmm. Based on because I went to the source paper, I think it's Valdez 2021, so it's a pretty recent site. But I think the paper they used isotopes like oxygen and carbon isotopes and it was, I can't remember if like the study itself actually got all this data, which is insane to imagine. But I think it might have been a meta study or a meta analysis where they just grabbed they just compiled all this data together and they're like, here you go. Here's all of the um, climate data for like half a billion years.
which is even more insane because every other paleontologist has to have a feud with another one. So two of them can't just like agree on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a project that I've been working on is just a giant dinosaur lineage family tree. Let me pull this
Yeah,
up.
that is probably the most contentious of all paleontologists, just trying to figure out a a family tree of dinosaurs. It's crazy because
Because I
everybody always has their different characters. Some people try to describe things differently. Because a lot of it's qualitative.
got to like the end of or not the end of sauropods, like the start of like when sauropods actually become sauropody, if you want to get whatever you want to say.
Hmm.
So like two or three of these are also in like two or three different locations in different papers.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, I don't know which specific paleontologist to trust. And so I was just like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go work
And the more
on.
papers you find, the more you're just gonna be like, just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know which one to take here. Like, which one is which?
You have like ceratopsians, Pachycephalosaura, which is most. That one was pretty. It's a fairly small and very specific tree. It was fairly easy to put together.
Yeah. It's usually the ones that are the most famous. The squeaky wheel gets the cheese, or the squeaky wheel gets the oil. That usually gets the most attention. So I feel like theropods, we kind of know what they are for the most part. Ceratopsians,
Definitely.
pretty solid on that. Armored dinosaurs, they usually got those down. Ornithopods, though, that's a pretty confusing lineage as well,
Yeah, that's ornithopoda. Yeah,
as I can
yeah.
see on the.
Stegosaurus goes off fairly simplistically, and
Yeah,
Ankylosaurus is very simplistic looking. But like you come down to theropods, it's like very simple for the first half, and then it just explodes into a very exotic tree.
yeah,
And that's
yeah. They had
it's
a really interesting diversification.
and I mean you even get to a point where it's not because you have like Allosaurida, which turns that lineage goes to Carcharodontosaurus, but like also earlier before they turn into Allosaurus, it splits off, and then eventually they turn into like Tyrannosaurids.
Yeah,
But it's like it also splits off, and it turns into like ostrich dinosaurs and Therizinosaurus, which is very bizarre. I mean, it's a very unique evolutionary tree.
hmm, yeah,
I mean, it's going to take a while to fill that out.
yeah.
Um,
Well, good luck to you. It's going to be a lot of work to try and get all that. And then with
oh,
all these new
definitely.
dinosaurs they're finding too, you're going to
It's going to
have your work
constantly
cut
be
out for
updated,
you. I feel like they
especially
just keep finding dinosaurs every month.
Tyrannosauridia, because that's the one that everybody wants to research because T-Rex is the most famous. Everybody wants to. So
It's
it's
cool.
it's
I
gonna be a
mean,
very
I get it.
diverse.
Yeah.
I'm excited to like get the end product. Set.
Yeah. That's going to be really cool to see, have it all put together.
Oh,
So I don't think
definitely
anyone's really done like a big scale family tree for dinosaurs. So
with
it'd be good
every
because
species. My goal
they
is to
get
try to
very
have.
intense at like one point, and then they kind
Yeah,
of like with ceratopsians, you probably got like it's really in depth right now, but then it's just like everything else, you don't really know what the context is.
yeah, but I'm just excited to have that done eventually. Well, I guess it will never be done, but
It will
Uh,
be mostly complete at some point. It's like an asymptote. It's just gonna get closer and closer to being done.
that's the nightmare of the paleo world. It's never done. Once
Yeah,
you've talked about every dinosaur, they go ahead and discover 15 more. And you're like, huh.
a new one.
And then you got mammals, and then you got everything that came before dinosaurs, proto dinosaurs like lizards and Dimetrodon, or not Dimorphodon. Dimetrodon is a pterosaur. Dimorphodon is the little thing with sail.
Dimetrodon is the one with the sail on its back. Dimorphodon
Yes,
is
thank you.
it's confusing. They kind of like got the same name.
They sound very similar, and I have confused them so many times. And
Yeah,
I sit there it takes me a minute. I'm like, wait, no, hang on. But I mean, it's a very broad subject, paleo in general, because even like they have like paleoanthropology, paleoarchaeology. It goes to like humans back to like everything.
yeah.
All
Everyone's got
above
their
it.
niche, and everyone can study something that they really enjoy.
So I mean, in that being said, I mean, everybody has like a reason for it. So I mean, why did you pick dinosaurs? I mean, why dinosaurs?
That's a good question. Um, so I just remember like one of my earliest memories was actually watching. Everyone always says they got in because of Jurassic Park. I feel like I'm one of the few people that actually got into it because of Walking with Dinosaurs. Have you heard of that documentary?
Absolutely, I'm excited for it to come
Yeah,
back in 2025.
me too. I'm so pumped. I can't wait till that comes back out. I'm really excited to see it.
The,
But yeah, I remember I just one of my earliest memories was just watching that show, and instead of like Jurassic Park where everything's like the monsters, they're like trying to eat everybody. I thought it was so interesting how this show
they were
kind of depicted them as like
creatures.
just yeah, just normal animals doing animal things. They're just animals we don't see nowadays. I just thought that was so interesting, and like they weren't trying to kill each other all the time. They're like looking for food. I mean, they were trying to kill each other at some points, but
Well, I
like that's
mean,
just how nature is. Like it was just like a good kind of depiction of what nature
it
was like
it
when we weren't around.
I can't really think of like a bigger like before Walking with Dinosaurs, a bigger documentary dinosaur series. I mean, a bigger dinosaur movie would just be flat out Jurassic Park, but I mean, that's a little obvious. But like, I don't know if there were any actual big documentary series for dinosaurs before Walking with Dinosaurs,
No, there was just like a lot of like TV kind of spots or
like
maybe like
one-off things.
references. Yeah, like kind of one-off things, and they were really poorly animated. Some of them were like claymation, which I get. It was like 90s, 80s, so like, and most people didn't know a lot about. This was like in the middle of the dinosaur renaissance, so like the public hadn't caught on to this yet, but paleontologists were just now figuring out like, oh, birds are related to dinosaurs. Oh, dinosaurs might have been feathered. Oh, they might have been warm blood. Oh, like there's all this thing that's happening so
And
quickly. And there's usually like a 10, 20, 30-year lag in science by the time it gets to the public.
I mean, we're going on 25 years since Walking with Dinosaurs came out. So you even look
Yeah,
back at that and you're like, oh, this is outdated. But it's still
I know.
good and you still love it. I mean,
That's another reason why I liked it. It was such a well-made documentary because
it still holds up.
it does. For even like some of the, it might be a little outdated and the CGI is a little old, but like I like how they filmed it in actual environments, and they got like people in like green morph suits to run around
Oh,
and
yeah,
like
most
make the
definitely.
footprints. But then they animated the dinosaur so it looked like there was an actual dinosaur running through. It's like, oh, that's so cool. I always just like, oh my gosh, it looks so real.
And I mean, Jurassic Park has that special place that is kind of, it's a lot of people's still today. It's their first exposure to dinosaurs
Exactly.
in the most. I mean, it's a little more. There's a little more out there today. You still have like Prehistoric Planet, Life on Our Planet. You have like Jurassic World. All three of those. You have the other Jurassic Park movies. I mean, you still have the Walking with Dinosaurs. They're coming back. You have some other the very poorly made. Well, not poorly made. The very Awkward Walking with Dinosaurs in like 2017 or whatever that was.
Yeah, I didn't see that one.
Kind of is like the
That
weird
one.
brother, or the weird cousin at the family reunion. It kind of has
Hmm.
the name. Um,
Yeah.
and then you have Jurassic Park, but I mean, I'm not. I wasn't even alive when Jurassic Park or Walking with Dinosaurs came out, but I still remember like them holding up long enough for me to be able to see them and witness them.
Hmm.
So it
Yeah.
is a very unique in that way.
Hmm. I still recommend it. Like it's on my
Oh, yeah, no, me too,
website
definitely.
that I put it as like one of the top. Obviously, Prehistoric Planet is like that's the thing that has thankfully like replaced it in terms of accuracy and like just being updated and better CGI. Like there's something to replace that. But I've always been like, man, like Walking with Dinosaurs is so good. And some people don't even know about it. Like that's also kind of the reason why I kind of want to start Daily Dinos because even though you know when I got into grad school, I was in this bubble, and I feel like everyone knows, everyone's up to date on everything about dinosaurs. Everyone's at the cutting edge. And then when you go outside of that bubble, people are like, "Hey, I heard this thing came out that like T Rex might have had feathers," and you're like, "Oh, dude, we figured that out long ago. Like, I'm gonna
Like,
blow
we're
your
past
mind real
that.
quick. Yeah, I'm gonna drop some serious knowledge on you real quick."
We're talking about lips now. We're past all that.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like talking about all this stuff, and yeah, so that like really kind of inspired me of like, okay, yeah, we gotta like kind of start moving that knowledge to the people,
And
like
that
kind
is
of
that
get
is
that
a little
out
bit
there.
why I started my podcast, because I personally feel like if you walk up to any random person on the street, if they turn out to be like a serious paleontologist, you just scored a gold mine. But if it's just a random average person, if you ask them what a T Rex or Triceratops is, or they will probably be able to tell you. I give you
Yeah,
9 times out of 10 they'll be able to tell you. But you walk up to anybody and you're like, "Hey, do you know what an Epideptocteryx is or an Ornithomimus?" They're gonna be like, Are those real things? Are you speaking gibberish?"
yeah,
I mean, so there is that, and I mean, even with like the Walking with Dinosaurs and Life on Our Planet, they still kind of stuck with more famous dinosaurs. I don't blame them. They did show some others that aren't as well known, but I don't blame them for sticking to more famous dinosaurs, because not everybody wants to see like, all right, well, this is whatever weird new stegosaurus like dinosaur, like here's Kentrosaurus. People are like, I don't know what that is. I want to see Stegosaurus.
or Dinochirus. Use Dinochirus. People are like, wait, what? That's a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, like that's
Swamp
a
monster.
very
That's a real dinosaur.
very unique dinosaur to show, and I mean, it's still since those are the more famous, well-known ones, they that leads them to be studied more, so we end up knowing more about them, which is why we're able to show so much about Tyrannosaurus, because it's probably the most studied dinosaur.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like a snowball effect because people love it because it's so charismatic that they study it more, which then we find out more about it, which means people like it more, which means we study it more. It's just this snowball effect of like we're just going to know so much more about T Rex, Triceratops, all those really well known dinosaurs than any other of them. And the fact that we find so many T Rex fossils that there's just a huge sample size for T Rex compared to any other dinosaur. I mean, most dinosaurs only have like one or two fossils, maybe. Some even
part
have like
of
half a bone.
part of a bone, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, whereas T Rex, we have like 50
we
skeletons,
if we were
which
to
is
assemble
huge.
every single Tyrannosaurus skeleton, we could probably get more than one complete skeleton.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we know. I mean, just with Sue and Stan alone, that's already increased how much we know about that animal. That just exploded everything. And then now with the dueling dinosaurs that's going to come out, I mean, we're just going to be finding so much more. We even have like skin impressions on that, like soft tissue
Did you
stuff.
happen
So
to
like,
go opening week or whatever that was?
I never got to go opening weekend, but I was there when they like it was actually getting like sorted out at the museum.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
I got
I
to
went. I
see
went
it.
there.
Like
That was I
you were
interviewed
there at
the
the
guy who found it, and he invited me. So
Holy
I just
shit,
got
that's
real
awesome.
lucky, just
Yeah,
knowing the
man,
right
that's
person.
crazy.
And I
What did he
mean,
have to say about it?
he was. I mean, he's. It's so weird because he was so humble about it. He's just like, yeah, we found this thing, and he just like texted me about it one day. He was like, hey, there's this thing, want to come to it? And I was like, yeah, why not?
Yeah,
It's like, okay.
yeah, that's awesome.
So I
It's
mean,
such a cool specimen.
it is a very unique specimen. Have they identified the Tyrannosaurin, the Tyrannosaur yet? Or is it, do we just think it's juvenile T-Rex? Have they actually identified it yet?
Well, yeah, I guess it just depends on who you ask, because some people might say that it's a Nanotyrannus. Some people might say that it's the juvenile T Rex. That was actually part of the reason, like they're trying to study it now. They want to do like a full, like legit study on it and like research it and kind of get it like to know exactly what kind it is.
I mean, and if it is Nanotyrannus, we just opened up another huge wonder of land. So,
Mm-hmm. But it's
and
a
I
big can
mean,
of worms, so it's going to be like a really difficult question to ask, and they did a really good job of like just calling it the Tyrannosaur. So it's like we're just gonna
yeah.
leave it there. You can interpret that however you want. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And wasn't there recently like a study that came out about like a new, very closely related like Tyrannosaur to Tyrannosaurus Rex that isn't?
Yes, yeah. So at the beginning of this year, they came out with this new study where they looked at some Tyrannosaurus they thought were Tyrannosaurus Rex fossils in New Mexico and like the Southwest, and they compared it. It's been a long time coming. I remember they started talking about this way back in 2019, which feels like ages ago at this point. But they're saying like something's brewing, like we got this big study coming. We're like, oh, what is it? And they compared this skeletal material, or at least skull material, to other tyrannosaurs, and they realized it was a new species of Tyrannosaurus that they called Tyrannosaurus macraensis, which is based on the Macrae rocks. That's where it's from. So it's a new species of Tyrannosaur that lived a little bit before T Rex, just a couple million years before. But
This is
I mean, to the average person, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But because I looked through the paper, I was like, well, what is the difference? And it had like a little bit of a more slender lower jaw, and then
ever
this,
so slight, just it's like
yeah, just enough to be like, okay, this is different than T Rex.
that is
And
a
then
very
also the horns on its eyebrow, and I think those were a little smaller too.
that also like that ever so slight difference in just the slight thinning of a skull or just the slight it makes you wonder how many other species have we just kind of crammed together and we're just like, yeah, these are all, I don't know, triceratops, and it's like 18 different species. It's like uh
Yeah, that's happened quite a lot. In fact, I think this happened a couple times this year where we looked at some new, like some old dinosaur material and like, oh wait, this is actually new dinosaur. Like Rio Jevnikar, it was a Spinosaur. It was originally Baryonyx. They found it way back in 2008, and then I guess somebody just took another look at it and was like, oh wait, this is actually a different Spinosaur. Hold on.
I mean, it just makes you think how like complex it is, that because also like you have like Suchomimus, Baryonyx, and then it's like how many other of this specific species is there, or not species, but of this like genus, this type is there, and I mean
A lot.
it.
If you're looking at it from biological terms, I mean, there's a whole continuum. There's going to be a whole like spectrum from Rio Jevanatrix that blends into Baryonyx, and like if we got every single dinosaur that ever lived, we wouldn't know where to draw the line because that's just how evolution works. But like we just have that fossil bias that we can be like, oh, well, here's one point, and here's another point. These are two
You
different
find
things.
the two ends, then you can kind of maybe find out where it meets, but that's still because I mean it's so weird as like somebody in the paleo world to just go like, oh yeah, this one was 163 million years ago. I don't know. It's like there's nothing to compare that to. There's
Yeah.
that's like an infinite number of world wars or like just wars in general long. I mean, it's like I don't know what to compare that to.
You can't. You just got to be like, okay, that's kind of how I'm like, oh, okay. It's just so big. It's so far away in history that you're just like, okay, we weren't there. I can't really wrap my head around it.
There's nothing to like. I mean, that's such a unique. Time is such a very unique sense of measurement because with weight, I can go, oh, well, this titanosaur just weighs 4 African or 4 to 5 to 6 to whatever number of African elephants. And people are just like, okay, just look up the weight of one African elephant. And then you can actually compare it to something that you know. Because, I mean, elephants are very well-known creatures and they're very large. And it's a very unique, you're like, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. This thing was really big and really heavy. But with time, it's like that's how long it takes for a neutron star to die. I don't know. It's like, what do I compare that to?
And no one's ever seen that either, so it's like,
No.
Okay, I have no reference for that.
It's because I was talking to somebody about Saurophagonax and Allosaurus. I mean, and they're very similar in looks and make. And honestly, if you handed me like a Saurophagonax hand claw and an Allosaurus hand claw, I probably couldn't tell the difference. And
Yeah.
Saurophagonax, let me see if I can remember this, is 156 million years. And Allosaurus was 163.5 million years. And so it's like there's a large gap in between there where Allosaurus clearly something happened to a group of Allosaurus or an Allosaurus, whatever, that turned it into a Saurophagonax. If you were to show that like middle fossil, it would look like both of them. I mean,
Yeah, just a medium-sized dinosaur.
I mean, these two specifically don't look the same because one's based on the Walking with Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
The other one's just a lot more paleo accurate to modern day. So it's a very unique process to be able to identify these.
Yeah. I always think it's so interesting. Like just, finding like that missing link kind of fossil.
And I mean, dinosaurs in general are kind of a missing link between birds and reptiles. And
Yeah.
people argue, or I would say people, paleontologists argue if they're more lizard-like or not dinosaur-like. They're all dinosaur-like because they're dinosaurs.
Or
if they're more
bird-like.
lizard-like or bird-like, but it's like, well, they're both, but neither at the same time.
Yeah.
They're very unique in that it's like they're just like a combination. It's such a unique, and even with the feathers thing, I mean, the argument is like they either always had feathers or never had feathers, but it's like, well, no, because juvenile T-Rex,
Some had them, some didn't.
it's like sauropods have no reason to have feathers. Why would they have? I mean, and there's no real evidence of like sauropods having feathers, but like T-Rex, there's not as much there, but like Sinosauropteryx, we're like, okay, it clearly had some kind of fuzzy feathered covering, and it was a ginger, which is a really fun.
Yeah, it's so cool that we get to know the actual.
Know what color these dinosaurs are.
I mean, sorry there for everybody if there's like a weird cut there, technical difficulties. He's talking about how it's interesting to know like the color of the dinosaurs, and I mean for a vast majority, sadly, we may never know the color of, and because I mean, didn't we like recently figure out that Deinonychus egg is like bright green or something weird?
I don't know if I saw that study, but that would be really interesting. it would kind of make sense since we have like emu eggs. They're blue.
But it's, I mean, it's such a unique Deinonychus eggs were blue, green in color, but the same as wow, I cannot. But some also had red brown speckles. So yeah, I mean, it's a very unique field because, I mean, not saying that every science field is 100% figured out. I mean, there's always better you can do. But like with like if you're building an airplane, it's kind of like, okay, you just follow these steps and eventually you have an airplane. It's very it's not simple. I'm not going to say it's simple because I wouldn't even know where to start to do that. But with paleo, it's like, okay, well, put together this skeleton, but you're missing 6/10 of the pieces. It's like, oh wait, it's a
you have no
puzzle.
reference because these animals don't live anymore. So
it's a puzzle.
we go from, that's why people were like, oh, it's just like this weird looking thing that like sits like a kangaroo, but it's also made of scales and it's like a lizard.
They just went in a puzzle, grabbed a handful of pieces, dropped it in your hand, and then threw the rest away. It's like, I can try, but I won't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a very unique brand of science. I mean, and it's also like the I don't want to say the first science because that's just, but like it's a science that gets kids interested, that gets people into the STEM field. I mean,
yeah,
it's because I don't remember the last time I heard a kid talking about neuron physics or something weird, neurophysics. They don't care. It's not interesting to them. They don't. As a 5-year-old, you're not wondering like, okay, well, how do the electronic parts of your brain connect to make memory? You don't. It's not. I mean, but you're like, big lizard thing. It's like, yeah. And even just going to a museum, I like, one thing I will never ever hate seeing, I will always love seeing, is going to a museum and then seeing like just somebody who's got a lot of experience in life, like an older person, and then they just see a dinosaur and you see that like child in them light up.
Yeah, there's like, whoa.
That childhood wonder. It's like, it's because, I mean, I really want to go to the museum in Berlin where they have the huge Brachiosaurus. Because, I mean, I talk about these dinosaurs all the time, and I talk about their size and their weight and all this, but I have only been to so many museums. I've luckily gotten to see like Allosaurus specimens, and I went to the Dinosaur National Monument. I had to remind myself that it's a national monument, not a national park.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to see like specimens there, but like it's personally, I want to go see these specimens out there so that I can get like a true understanding of the size. It's, and I mean, it's because Ceratosaurus is lovely dinosaur, but it's like as tall as like us. It's as tall as like a human.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
In the eye. It's weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like such a, it's still big. It's still massive. I mean, well, it's
still big for us. Like it'd be like running up on a polar bear. Like we'd be like, oh my god! Like if we saw Ceratosaurus, we'd be losing our minds. Like, oh my god, you would not believe what I just saw. This massive, huge lizard, bigger than any animal ever. And that's just like a.
It's like, oh, wait till they figure about Allosaurus and Torvosaurus and all these other things. Like, let's not bring those in.
Yeah,
that does. I mean, in the last interview I had, we had talked for a bit. Like, if you could bring one dinosaur to observe back, what would it be?
Man, I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to think. There's so many interesting ones to bring back. I'm trying not to say T-Rex because I feel like it's like the one you want to go to because it's like it's just the dinosaur. I feel like you'd want to know it. But like besides that, I feel like I'd want to bring back maybe some like Sinosauropteryx or maybe Archaeopteryx because
that something lesser known, get a lot more knowledge on it.
It's like the quintessential like missing link of like, okay, this is what if people saw this, they'd be like, oh, this is what a dinosaur is and a bird. Like it's both.
And I mean, obviously, if the answer is you got to run into it out in the woods in the middle of Kentucky or whatever, my answers will dwindle a lot because I don't want to walk.
I'd say none. If there was any dinosaur that I ran into the woods, I'd say zero. I wouldn't want to run into any dinosaur.
I don't know, something like if it's one Compsognathus, I think I could take it, but
probably.
But I would rather not walk into like turn a corner and it's just Majungasaurus standing there. It's like,
yeah,
I'm good. I'm gonna head that way.
I'll avoid that dinosaur. I'll let somebody else figure out what that dinosaur is like.
Oh, God, you've reposted a few things from Fossil Crates. Yeah. I love Dr. Brian Curtis. He's helped me out so much. I mean,
yeah. Have you seen their new study that they came out with?
I haven't gotten a chance to look at it yet. I mean, you want to talk about it for a little bit?
Yeah, I can talk about it. It's what they did was they tried to reconstruct the age of sauropods in the Morrison. So they looked at Diplodocus, a couple Diplodocus specimens, and Supersaurus. So, like with histology, what they do, if you're not familiar, they what they do is they take the bone, they cut a thin section of it, thin enough,
kind of like a tree,
to grind it down, put it under a microscope to where they can actually see the growth rings. This is what bones do: is they deposit rings. Usually, that's a whole other can of worms to open up, but usually every year. So it's a pretty reliable indication of age if you could count up the rings. And they tried to do that with sauropods. And it's really important because sauropods have like insane growth. A lot of the research suggests that they just don't stop growing for most
of their
childhood. Like for the first decade or so, it seems like they just never stop growing. Like they literally grow continuously.
I feel like with sauropods, they're like alligators that they don't stop. Alligators and crocodiles never stop growing. They just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger until they.
There's actually a misconception. I had to realize that when I was doing my master's thesis that they don't actually continue growing. They have what's called indeterminate growth. But I did one of my advisors on my thesis was Holly Woodward, who did a lot of growth. If you don't know, she helped describe like the growth of Maiasaura. So she is like an expert on dinosaur growth, and she does a lot of crocodile growth, and she found that like they actually do stop growing. It's just they just grow so slowly that it appears like they stopped, or it appears that they keep going, but they actually do stop at some point. If they live long enough to reach that point, they do eventually stop.
But I mean, even with sauropods, they're so massive. They kind of, to get to that size, there's definitely a large period of time where they are just growing like nonstop.
Yeah.
Just to get as big as like the smallest sized one. I mean, it's especially with like Titanosaurs, because imagine that for like Argentinosaurus, like the largest dinosaur, period. I mean, it's well, I say that, but we also have like Patagotitan and other Titanosaurs that are in the same area, but still, there's definitely a portion of time where they're just growing and growing and growing and growing, just nonstop. And I mean, I could only imagine what they would do to a forest. So,
yeah. It is crazy. But they actually, what's cool about that study is they realized that even those really big dinosaurs did at some point stop growing. So something like Supersaurus had this thing called external fundamental system. And it's essentially what you see when your bone stops growing. And this is essentially where that crocodile thing comes in, where you do technically grow, but it's so minuscule that
it stops being noticeable.
It's just like kind of one layer. It's like if your skin is growing, like obviously you're putting new layers of skin on, but it's not like you've got like a big mound of skin on you. It's like just a little layer of skin.
It's not as noticeable from like infant to like adolescence.
Yeah.
It's not that noticeable.
Yeah. It's that when you put it on a graph, it looks like it's zero growth.
And then like even, I mean, reptiles in general they tend to live very, very long lives. I mean, turtles, which kind of makes me think, is there something, since turtles and ankylosaurs look so similar, is there something like there that's kind of like maybe ankylosaurs lived really long lives? I mean,
maybe
that might
be. I don't know if anyone's really done any type of histology on ankylosaurs, and it would be a really interesting study, because if they were like turtles where they got to live a little longer, it actually would kind of make sense, since they kind of developed all that armor to deter predators, and so they eventually wouldn't be like preyed upon as much. So maybe they could live longer.
Because I mean, T-Rex, as big and bad as it is, it's not messing with like fully grown Triceratops or fully grown ankylosaurs. It's messing with like infants, older, towards the end of life, sick. It's not going for the healthy adult. It's
I just like any predator today, it's gonna pick the easy meal.
It's just picks the easy meal. I mean, and also, because I'm going way off on this, Triceratops is a very solitary creature as is, but as we know, like the Hell Creek Formation was like a swamp basically.
Yeah, there was like some swampy bits, and then it would kind of be gradential from like a river system to kind of like a swamp, but then into like a more forested area.
So could Triceratops fill the same niche as like a moose today? I mean, moose are technically aquatic mammals, which is a very weird thing, because they dive into the water and eat like seagrass and stuff. So, I mean, could Triceratops fill that same niche? I mean,
I'm not too sure. I don't know if they had much swimming capacity. I think, no one's really done a study on that. I don't know if that's really what they would do. I know that they had really poor senses. A study came out, I think 2021 also. A lot of studies were happening in 2021. I think it looked at, because what?
They couldn't go out and dig, so they had to just look at what they had.
Exactly. Like everyone was just stuck in front of their computer and like, okay, what kind of code can I run? But they looked at the brain. So they scanned the endocast of Triceratops. They compared it to all the other endocasts of like sauropod or marginocephalians. So Triceratops, its relatives, all the horned dinosaurs, and then the pachycephalosaurs. And they compared it.
Group, apparently.
Yeah. So pretty much any of like something with their head. If they had like a helmet or a crest or dome, something, they compared it to that. And they found that its brain was actually more similar to a Pachycephalosaurus, even though it was so much smaller than Triceratops. And so they thought that it had really bad senses. It had really poor eyesight, really poor hearing, not really good smell. I think it was smell. Yeah, they just did not have really good senses. So it might not have been a good swimmer. It probably needed to be a little coordinated to swim and like eat stuff off the ground. This thing kind of just seemed like it would just roam around, and then if something startled it, it would just charge first, ask questions later.
It's also not out of the question that it would stand in like ankle deep water and just feed off that. Yeah. I mean that's I mean, deer will do that. It's not a crazy idea.
Yeah, I probably did wander around in those kind of areas too.
So like I mean, I guess you'd have to just look at Triceratops teeth, but like you're saying, how it splits off to Pachycephalosauri, Sauria, and then Ceratopsia. They're in the same group of. I actually put them together in the same group of Ornithischian.
Yeah, that would be the right one. Yeah, because you put it right there, Marginocephalian. Like that's kind of the overall group that covers Pachycephalosaurs.
It's like what happened before. There was something that split into Ceratopsians and then Pachycephalosaurus, which is so weird. Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus, they look I don't want to say so similar, but they have general, one's just more spiky, one's more shieldy. It's not like a complex idea. They have very similar structures of body, and that's because they're related. But like, you're telling me this thing and this thing are related?
It's very distantly. Yeah.
The only similarity they have is that they use their head. It's such like a unique structure. It's if you told that to like the average person, it'd be like Triceratops and Pachycephalosaurus are related, and they'd ask what a Pachycephalosaurus is, then they'd be like, yeah, no, I don't believe you, because that's like I was gonna say a bull and a ram, but actually I think those might be related somehow. That wouldn't surprise me if they were.
Some type of like an ungulate or something. I have no idea about mammal like family trees.
I don't either.
I know nothing.
There will be inevitably somebody who's like, your mammal knowledge sucks. Don't talk about mammals.
Mammalogists are just like rolling in their grave right now. They're like, no.
But it's like, if you show me a T-Rex and an Allosaurus, I could. It's like, okay, they look. General structures are very similar. They probably belong to some kind of similar whatever. But not these. These are very, very unique.
Yeah. It's just that one decided to evolve to be quadrupedal. Like one decided to be, because that's kind of the base state of dinosaurs, is that they're two-legged, and that they eventually, the bigger ones, had to become quadrupeds. They had to walk on all fours.
Massive, so so like the early sauropods are like bipedal.
Yeah,
they're not quadrupedal.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You just got these really long-necked, two-legged things.
That's. Hopefully, I can. This is sauropodomorph. Rogosauridia. Well, that actually doesn't show it. Keep zooming in, but that's or that's not being shown. That's quadrupedal. It's and relatively speaking, sauropods having 4 legs. Well, I guess they had 4 limbs regardless usually, but walking on 4 legs is a kind of a like this is kind of where they started, because Lephagosaurus kind of had no, that's actually 2 legs. Never mind. I was looking at the.
But we're getting there, because that's kind of when they're nearing the Triassic extinction, and then like they kind of are allowed to get bigger.
Yeah, more like 4 legs. Kind of like hadrosaurs, where they kind of. Here's where they're more like hadrosaurs, where they walk on 4 legs, but they can also still kind of go on 2.
Yeah.
Ish. But then here it's like, okay, yeah, no, they're stuck with 4 legs. And that does make me question, because eventually sauropods weren't as common. They were kind of replaced in the Cretaceous a little bit. I mean, they still existed around, but if the dinosaurs didn't go extinct, and hadrosaurs kept getting if they kept getting bigger, would they eventually kind of turn back into sauropods?
I don't know. It's kind of maybe. Although the reason that so what I think is that this is all speculation. I got no facts to support this. I'm just kind of spitballing here. It seems that sauropods got so big because they had that long neck, and they had kind of more air quotes primitive teeth, where they had just like we do, where they have just like one tooth in one socket. And so instead of like having what orthopods do, where they have like that tooth battery, so sauropods probably, in order to eat more food, they had that long neck where they could just kind of stand in place, just kind of sweep over stuff, reach into trees. So they just kind of stayed put and had to just eat more to get that nutrients. Whereas I think ornithopods, they wouldn't need that long neck because they had a better set of teeth to help process their food. So they could probably get by with like the skull that they had. They probably wouldn't need a long, I mean, it would probably help, but they probably didn't need it per se because the dental battery was just so efficient at breaking down plant material.
And I mean, not just humans, but mammals in general, we have very unique teeth because mammals usually only get like 2 sets of teeth. These dinosaurs, they're like sharks. They get just as many teeth as they need. I mean,
always
one falls out, another one grows in. It's very unique. It's very unique for mammals to only have like 2 sets of teeth like that, or have
we're still going. We're still rocking it with our 2 sets of teeth.
Only because dinosaurs died.
Yeah,
I truly believe that humans would not. Well, I don't know. It would take a lot longer for humans to come into existence if dinosaurs didn't get wiped out. That is for sure.
Yeah.
If we would even come into existence at all. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it would happen if we would be around here if dinosaurs were still, people. I mean, obviously there's birds, but like if those big, massive predatory dinosaurs were still around, I don't know if we would be around. Maybe something similar.
It would be interesting to be able to observe like a alternate universe where it's decay to extinction didn't happen. What would happen?
Someone did. Have you seen the book After Dinosaurs by Dougal Dixon?
I haven't. I need to check that out.
This thing it answers that exact question. So this guy, Dougal Dixon, was from the 1980s. And he originally wrote this book called After Man, where it was like humans go extinct, but everything else lives on. And it's like speculative biology, evolution, like what kind of animals live.
The environment so much. Well, I guess nowadays it would probably be bad because we have like nuclear reactors and stuff nowadays. So
yeah,
it's probably
not assuming that. It was assuming like a natural, like somehow we just died off, like how other animals do. We went extinct. There's nothing wrong in the environment, and just seeing like how animals change over time, and it did well. So he's like, all right, well, I kind of want to see because he was a paleontologist. So then he's like, all right, well, let's do dinosaurs now. Let's answer the question everyone wants to know.
Yeah, what would happen?
It was interesting. It was very interesting.
Lizard people.
Not quite, but there was a lot of different things, a lot of different dinosaurs that existed. Some of them were pretty, I think, accurate. Like there was this one called like a turtosaur, which was like a long neck dinosaur, sauropod, that developed armor like an ankylosaur. So it had like a bony head. It had like bone, like a shell over its body. And I was like, okay, that kind of seems realistic. Or there was also like this thing called the Gormand. And again, these are names. I think they have he made like a saurus kind of name for it, but like in big bold letters, it's the Pertosaur, Gormand. And Gormand is like if T-Rex fully lost its arms, and it's just kind of like this big hulking thing that could like unhinge its jaws and just like swallow prey whole.
That would be. I guess we wouldn't have to worry about it because we wouldn't exist. But I mean, It's also there already were sauropods that had armor. I mean, that's not even like a unique thing.
Exactly. That's why I thought it was so interesting. I'm like, oh, it's like if a Saltosaurus just kind of
kept going.
I mean, to the extreme.
I mean that's basically a fusion of Apatosaur and well, not specifically Ankylosaur, but an ankylosaurid dinosaur. I mean, and it is a unique thing because I am curious how because also dinosaurs in the Cretaceous, especially in North America, from what we know, the diversity was a little lower than like earlier Cretaceous, Jurassic kind of things. There was kind of a lot less, but if dinosaurs would either evolve themselves into something new or if they would evolve themselves out of existence, if that makes sense. So they'd stop being dinosaurs.
Probably figure out something new to fill the gaps. Something to just like some type of new form that they take on.
Because I mean,
they're so ubiquitous over the world that it would be hard to imagine that they would just somehow die off. Like we still have, I mean, crocodiles before dinosaurs existed, pretty much crocodiles, pseudotsuchians, that whole lineage, like ruled the world. They were crushing it.
I mean, it's not,
and they're still around.
Yeah, I mean, they grew big during the time of the dinosaurs, and they kind of just shrunk to change. I mean, because that's it. I guess it would just all depend on how the atmosphere changes. I mean, if there's like another weird global snap, ice storm or something, then a lot of dinosaur species would probably end up dying off, and then you'd get some new weird whatever species that comes in. But assuming that like just the environment didn't change, it just stayed Cretaceous for till now, I guess. I mean, I wouldn't really. We would have some very crazy dinosaurs, and I mean, it would be very interesting to, and because we do have like weird hybrids nowadays, where it's like a donkey. I mean, that's not necessarily a natural one, but it is something that could possibly happen. So, I mean, I wonder if there were any like weird crossbreeding ceratopsians where it's like,
oh, probably, yeah,
that would be such like a unique, like a Styracosaurus bred with a Triceratops, and now it's got just 3 massive horns or something crazy.
Yeah, that would be a really interesting concept of like looking into hybrids, because it's so hard because we can't really study like biology concepts of species from bones.
I mean, if you want to study a tiger, you lock a tiger in an exhibit and you just watch what it does. I mean, it's not, but you can't do that with a dinosaur. I mean, it's dead. They're gone. I mean, it's
and you don't know what could mate with another, like what dinosaurs could mate and what would be species. Where is the line? Maybe all these things that we say are different species are the same and they just look very different. They could propagate with each other, or maybe all these things like a Triceratops, there's so much individual variation. Maybe it is actually multiple different species. It's so hard to tell just from looking at the bones. We're always going to be, not know as much.
And of course, there's like different. You say Triceratops, but then there's like Triceratops horridus and Triceratops. What's the other one? Like Longius or something.
Prorsus. So there's horridus and there's Prorsus.
Prorsus. So it's like if those two like mated, it probably wouldn't be that outlandish to just be like, okay, well, it's just like a third Triceratops. I mean,
that's assuming that those two are actual like unique species, because if they're unique species, then they can't mate with each other.
But like if they're both just like Triceratops, and it's just like, okay, they just made another. So I mean, because a donkey and a horse are 2 unique species. Pachyrhinosaurus and Triceratops are 2 unique species.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, what if they did come across each other? What if for some reason they did? And I mean, what if like an adult T-Rex was like, okay, well, there's this Albertosaurus. It doesn't know what an Albertosaurus is. I mean, it's just like, okay, this thing kind of looks like me. What if it's like, all right, well, I mean,
Can this
whatever
pass
happens,
on my
happens.
genes?
So, I mean, you get like some weird hybrid, if they could mate. I mean, hybrid Albertosaurus Rex. I mean,
yeah, it would be really interesting to see. Like, it'd be really cool that you're saying earlier of like bringing a dinosaur back. I feel like if we just have to bring them all back just so we could see like, okay, like are these actually different species, or are there's like some that aren't actual species? Are there more species, less?
because I mean, there is definitely a cutoff. I mean, you can't breed a Triceratops with a T-Rex. It's like, okay, well, that's like trying to breed a lion and a horse. It's not gonna work.
It's not gonna work.
It's like you're gonna get something real weird. But like within the same group, I mean, like even with mammals, like mammoth and mastodon, they're very similar. Was there possible crossbreeding? I mean, Coelodonta and Elasmotherium, they're both like woolly rhinoceri. I mean, is there possible? And I guess that all comes down to like, are they in the same place at the same time? Is like hybrid animals, is that due to humans, like us trapping, like with like a liger, is that like humans trapping a lion and a tiger in a room until they like mate?
I think it's that, because a lot of animals know, and some animals like may not even think to do it. Like I think there's a lot of species, like sometimes species like speciation happens just based on like environments or based on time of day. Like if something's diurnal and one's nocturnal, they could theoretically mate and make a new pass on their genes. But like if one lives at the daytime, one lives at nighttime, they're never going to come across each other, and they'll never create new.
It's just kind of,
so they're technically different species.
It's a very unique and rare thing to the point where it's like you can fit all of them in like one screen.
A Zorse, Kyle Wolf. Oh my god, this is why we need to have like dinosaur hybrids, because we can get like silly names like this. A Geep. Narluga. This is like straight out of a Dr. Seuss book.
Beefalo. I mean, and it's not outlandish. Narluga, narwhal and beluga whale.
Yeah.
Huh. That would be interesting. That's interesting. Does it still have the horn?
I don't know.
Is this like something that we've seen and taken like? No, it doesn't. Huh.
It's more beluga-esque.
That thing is freaky looking though.
It's interesting.
It's like the colors of a narwhal. That's But like it's just right place, right time. So I mean, it is. I mean, it is possible, but I guess since there's so few specimens here in like the modern era, I could only it would be even rarer and even fewer in like paleo records, and that's just. I mean, that's just due to like preservation bias. I mean, that's not even like, because also with like breeding species like that, it kind of is like, okay, well, what is the downside? What happens to the animal? I mean, and I would be curious if there's like a way to tell if like through like bone structure somehow if an animal is like an albino or whatever the other one is. What is the opposite of albino?
Oh, I don't know, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
It's
that
like
would
this,
be interesting. There's stuff like that we don't even know. Like, I don't know if we'll ever be able to tell. Well, actually, maybe that might be something you might be able to do is you'd have to like maybe take like albino crocodiles. You have to like just study all their anatomy and then like have to tell like, okay, is the bone structure of a regular crocodile different than an albino? It might be, since
melanism.
skin color kind of takes in, like the skin takes in vitamin D, which helps build bones, maybe. Like,
And obviously, what we can experience from modern animals is albino animals in the wild tend not to survive as long.
Yes,
Unless
just
they're in a
because they look
snowy
so
environment,
different.
then it works out real well, and it's like perfect for them. But you put an albino deer out in the woods in Kentucky, it's probably not going to last long. It's not going to be able to hide as well from bobcats and bears and whatever not. But
Or it may not even be able to like reproduce just because it looks so different from the average animal that they may not even recognize it and be like, oh, that's a different species. They may not realize like, oh, that is a deer. They're like, that's something else.
And it's not out of the question that there were like albino, and apparently the term is melanism for the opposite of albino, which is whenever it gets like darker, which is, I mean, it's not out of the question that was like a thing. I mean, it's
for sure.
There were I could probably almost guarantee you that there was like a albino triceratops or something out there. But
if there was albino crocodiles and albino birds, then there was definitely albino dinosaurs.
And it's a very unique thing, and that would be very, very cool to see. I mean, get that albinization, if that's the right word. I don't even think that's a word.
We just made it one.
For the terms, and I'm curious if like, because that's of course it's a very rare thing that happens, but if it can happen in a whale, could it happen in a shark? And if so, could there be an albino megalodon somewhere? Well, not anymore, but could there have been an albino megalodon?
It might be. I guess just based on, I don't even know if sharks have melanin. I'm guessing they do because like it's in skin. So if sharks have melanin, then yeah, probably.
I mean, they're like pretty much complete cartilage, so I wouldn't be surprised if they do.
Yeah, so if they have melanin, then there definitely had to be like an albino shark, and there probably was an albino megalodon.
Albino sharks exist. Yes, albino sharks do exist. Okay.
Here we go.
Oh wow, that is freaky. They are kind of freaky looking. Because I mean, it's a lot more obvious when they're swimming at you, which would actually make it a lot more horrifying, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That one's got like one eye in the front of its head. That's weird. But
oh, yeah,
those are a little freaky looking.
Those are strange. It's like a
and
ghost.
There's like that thing looks cool though. I mean, that actually does look really cool though. And I think there's 2 records of albino humpback whales, I want to say.
Okay, so it's not just dependent on the environment. It seems like that's just like if you got skin, then you can be an albino.
I think albinism, whatever the correct terminology is like a genetic dysfunction, disorder, I guess.
Yes, mutation.
So it's not like, oh well, your environment. Well, I mean, in some cases, I feel like it could be like with polar bears, where it's maybe they became albino, maybe they became polar bears because the environment that they're in is white. I mean, so like the albino ones kind of just lasted longer. I mean, it's not. And I mean, there was definitely a lot less cases of that with dinosaurs because there was just less snow in general. So I'd probably guess that it's just a genetic dysfunction before I would guess that since there's snow caps, the dinosaurs turned white. But I guess
that might have been the case for like Uranus, since that lived in like a much colder environment and it had like all that, all those feathers on it. It probably maybe white.
Nanukosaurus.
Yeah, that could have also been one.
If there's ginger dinosaurs, there's probably white dinosaurs too.
Yeah,
blue and green. I mean, it's all a possibility. It's just the answer to anything paleontological is just let's go find some more fossil records.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, we don't know this. All right, let's go dig some more stuff up.
Go find some more stuff.
It's just the go-to answer. It's and saying I don't know, I bet, is very, very common.
Yeah, it is very common. Although I don't really like I don't know, because it's like I'm just like, well, there's got to be something. Like we can even like guess, because then if I'm wrong, then we can prove it. Like we can prove I'm wrong.
I mean, and then even if you are wrong, that's like one more theory where it's like, okay, well then this isn't the case, so we can maybe make assumptions to other theories that could be the case.
Yeah, and that's why I love paleo art. Like there was
I love paleo.
You know that picture by Bob Nichols where it's like the two Carcharodontosaurs carrying away that little long neck
sauropod? Yes.
Yeah. That's such a cool story because like somebody was like, I don't think a dinosaur could do that. I don't think they could do that. And then they did the study and they're like, yeah, it actually couldn't. And then he was like, oh, okay. And then he revised the picture and made the sauropod smaller. I'm like, that's awesome. Like that, I love that. Where it's like somebody comes up with something crazy and scientists get to be like, let's actually test it.
I mean, it's trial and error, just nonstop.
Yeah.
Science in general is one big game of screw around, find out. I mean,
that's right. Yeah. It's literally just hitting wall after wall after wall after wall until you like finally are like, oh wait, I think I got something.
It's a bird shot at a wall and you see what sticks. It's because I mean, like you could be. I've seen people who are like, oh well, maybe T-Rex's small arms is because they had wings and that they could fly. It's like, no, I heavily doubt that. And if they could, I would be very horrified of Tyrannosaurus.
Somebody commented on like one of my posts and was like, I think they're like, well, maybe T-Rex had like cartilage wings. Like people don't even take that into consideration. I'm like, hey, I don't think it had cartilage wings.
No.
Like, we're pretty confident it didn't have that.
The bone structure doesn't say.
I like the creativity, but I don't think that's
very fascinating idea. Work that into a story or something.
Yeah.
But realistically, no. And I saw something where they were talking about Spinosaurus, how like buffalo kind of have, I mean, it was like a joke, but like the buffalo kind of has a huge hump behind their head. Maybe Spinosaurus has something like that to get like stronger neck muscle.
Maybe. The spine of Spinosaurus is so strange. I don't know if it would be for neck muscles just because.
I doubt it because it's on the back.
Yeah, because if you look at like the buffalo, you can see those spines kind of are close to its shoulders and it kind of creeps up into its neck.
Yeah.
Maybe something like Acrocanthosaurus, like that is not as big of spines, but like those kind of go up towards its neck. So it's possible it was something like that. Like that hump had like big muscles. But for Spinosaurus, I don't even know.
And Spinosaurus has such a very unique tail because not like tail, but like story. I mean,
yes, literally and figuratively, it has a very interesting tail.
And in the sense that like we did have a good amount of fossil records that were just destroyed. I mean, and so now we have to kind of restart everything, and that is some of the appeal to Spinosaurus. I mean, because anybody who's watched Jurassic Park 3 nowadays is like, that Spinosaurus looks wrong. It's wrong, but it's one of my things with like Jurassic Park. Anybody who is constantly criticizing it, it's also kind of like it's a movie. Like 50% of that is
it's okay.
50% of it is shut up and watch the movie, have fun, and then the other 50% is like some of the studies for the time were right. I mean, T-Rex in like the 93, I want to say 1993 is when the original Jurassic Park movie came out. If I probably have that wrong, but does it say it on that poster? No, it doesn't. Okay. I was hoping. But like the T-Rex, it doesn't have lips, it doesn't have feathers, it's still got like skin wrapping looks to it. It's not because the director of Jurassic Park was like, you know what, science is dumb. It's because he actually looked at like fossil records for T-Rex. He was like, okay, yeah.
That was accurate for the time.
This is like, what I got for the time. I mean, and I'm sure if he made the original Jurassic, if like the Jurassic Park was to originate nowadays, it would probably be the same, because a lot of the paleontology studies that we have today is thanks to Jurassic Park. I mean, it got a lot of people out there. So I am glad that it came out when it did and gives us this golden age of paleontology. But if it were to come out today, we somehow had all the same studies, I mean, I do feel like he would make a more accurate T-Rex, make it
100%.
Maybe a little bit fatter, maybe have lips, maybe feathers on it. But I mean, and even with the like Velociraptor, there's still like a story behind that. It's like it wasn't Velociraptor, it was Deinonychus. He based it on Deinonychus, but they were like, well, Velociraptor sounds cooler, so we'll take that name. I mean, I still don't know.
We're gonna make it bigger because it's a movie. Like, we want it to look scarier.
It is, yeah. I mean, you can't have it be like hip level with somebody. It's not intimidating. I mean, and I kind of go with the whole like, okay, well, they look like that because it's not like 100% a dinosaur.
Yeah,
they have like amphibian and reptile and bird DNA like mixed in to the genetic code, so it would alter what it looks like and acts like a little bit. But I mean, so this is that little bit. I am still curious where they got the Dilophosaurus frill idea from.
I don't know. I think it probably goes back to that whole gene editing thing of like, so they mixed it with like frog DNA, lizard DNA. They probably, that's just part of the lore of that movie, is that they just put in like the what is that? The thing in Australia. It's like that frilled lizard. I think that's what it is. The frilled. They probably just put frilled lizard DNA in it.
And I mean, it's also like, well, it's like that is an interesting idea. Clearly, there's something to that. I mean, but it's not necessarily paleo accurate. But I mean, you can also enjoy, like I personally, I love the Jurassic franchise. I love it with a fiery passion. It's one of the big reasons that I am into dinosaurs, and it fostered that like dinosaur love in me. So I mean, I have a lot of respect for it. And on the other side, I also know that it's not marketed as a documentary. If it was marketed as a documentary, then yes, I would probably have a problem with it. But it's not. It's marketed as like entertainment. So like, it's, again, shut up, watch the movie.
That's my thoughts exactly. Of like, it's fun, and it is this giant sensation that got people into dinosaurs. So it's like, I mean, yeah, get people into dinosaurs. It'd be like people complaining about how Taylor Swift made the NFL more popular. It's like, just enjoy it. Like, the NFL is more popular now, or like people know more about dinosaurs now. Like, it's great. This is great for all of us. It's great for me. I get to talk about it more, and people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it draws people in. I mean, it's like, okay, and then they figure out about the like dinosaur documentaries like Life on Our Planet and Prehistoric Planet and Walking with Dinosaurs, and even well, no, I was going to say Prehistoric Park, but that is a little bit documentary-ish. He does do a lot of actual knowledge in there. But it draws that in, and then it encourages you to learn more about it. I mean, granted, if they were like Prehistoric Park or not Prehistoric Park, Prehistoric Planet season 3, and then it's just the Jurassic Park movie, I'd probably be a little concerned. But
yeah,
be like, whoa, wait a minute, what happened?
Did we just figure out that? Like, what the heck just happened?
It's like David Attenborough. He's like, turns out every study for the past 60 years has been horribly incorrect. It's like,
we're going back to the 90s.
that would be interesting, though. That would be very interesting on why and how that would happen. But
yeah,
that again, I mean, it's definitely just entertainment. I mean,
yeah, I use that as like a good way to get people about dinosaurs, because I know if you see my account, there's like a thread that I have every once in a while. I'll probably say something about it this Wednesday of like could this dinosaur actually exist if Jurassic Park actually happened? And like, because I did a YouTube video on that of like, well, could they? I know the whole gene editing thing of like, well, they have like genetics, but some people may not know that. Some people might actually be like, oh, like dinosaurs would live in jungles. And it's like, well, this is a good opportunity to see
like
where
Velociraptor.
Like, let me teach you about where these dinosaurs would actually exist and what their environments were like.
Like Velociraptor probably didn't live in a jungle.
It lived in Mongolia. It would have been very similar to like what Mongolia is like now today, where it's sand dunes, desert.
Yeah, I mean,
dry, didn't rain a lot, so it would have been very different than Costa Rica.
It would be very, very different than Hawaii. I mean, it's drop a jaguar in the Sahara, it's going to die. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing that I always try to say too. Of like just because it lived in a different environment doesn't mean it can't live somewhere else. Like
it wouldn't adapt.
It's like such an extreme environment. We don't think of it because things can live there. It's not like,
but it's also like, well, how adaptable is a velociraptor if you were to put it into like a rainforest? Would it thrive because then it just has more to eat because there would be a lot more life there, or would it just kind of freak out and like starve to death because it doesn't know how to hunt in that environment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I mean that it's a very unique idea for a movie. I mean, it's and I love the franchise, and I will still say that Fallen Kingdom is at the bottom of the list of that till the day I die. It is not the best one of those.
Not great. It's not great. You saw some cool dinosaurs in it,
but it did feel like a story connector. But it's a different side of the paleo community.
Yes.
It's and that's why I did start a different section on my podcast where I do talk about like the Jurassic franchise, and I do talk about that because it's such a crucial point in the historiography of paleontology. I mean, it's what got us here today, and whether people want to admit that or not, I mean, it's crucial to the world of paleontology. I mean,
it really is.
Sit here and act like it's not important and that it didn't happen is blasphemy. Actually, I would call it blasphemy.
Yeah,
it's
super important to just the development of paleontology, and it probably, just like how I talked about how paleo art influences, that's a form of paleo art. Like that influences studies. I'm sure somebody saw Jurassic Park and was like, well, did T-Rex actually not see you if you didn't move? Or could it do this? Could it do that? Like, it's probably got people thinking, even if it wasn't like paleontologists, probably got other scientists thinking like, well, is that actually what could happen? Let's test this out.
Mean, paleontologist is such a unique title because if you're like an astrophysicist, you're 9 times out of 10 you're probably in a lab. and people are like, okay, well, you're in a lab looking at something, or you're in an observatory or something, you're looking into the stars or whatever. But paleontologist, you can be in a lab, you can be out in the field, you can just actually be some like, not throwing shade at you because I'm the same way. I mean, you could just be like a dude at home who just did their research and then published a paper. I mean, it's a very unique title. I mean,
yeah, as long as you have the resources, you can figure it out.
In the most famous version of paleontology is being out in the field digging up the dinosaur bones. But I mean, even the people in the lab, even the people who go to a museum and just assemble the fossils, they're paleontologists. I mean, it's a very, very unique process. I mean,
yeah, labs are filled with all sorts of different people that are great at some things, great at other things. It's really good because like you get the best out of everybody and you can get the whole process just like nailed down, because some people may not want to go out into the field, but like they totally get like putting together a family tree. Like they're like, I got this. I know how to do this. Like I know exactly the characters. Some people might not know how to do that, but they're like, man, I know how to dig a fossil. I could dig for weeks. I could dig out for like 8 weeks in the hot sun with no water.
Personally, me, like I love sitting down and doing like podcasts like this. And that's because it's something I'm passionate about. If somebody was like, sit down and file these taxes, I would lose my mind. I would quit within 2 weeks. I can't do that. I'm not a person who can do that. And that's why I do want to go into the field of paleontology. And it's not. So half of the reason is definitely just, I want to go find some dinosaurs. That
if there's any consolation, you don't have to just put together family trees. You can do other. There's so much more to
that is. I mean,
putting together a family tree. I avoid that stuff like the plague too. I'm like, oh, that's like a lot of work.
A small part of me.
If the opportunity ever came to me, I wouldn't turn it down. But I would be like, okay, this is going to be hard.
A small part of me does regret starting that because I know it's going to be a nightmare to finish, but. It's also like, well, I want to do it. It's something I do in my free time. It's not something that I have to do, which makes it better, more enjoyable, if you will. Because the moment you have to do something, it kind of ruins it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a little bit of the passion away. It's like, okay, well, I have to do it. It's not something that I can choose to do.
Yeah, if you're willing to do it on your own because you love it, you'll be able to do more of it.
I mean, if somebody called me right now and they sent me a location within a reasonable distance, I'm looking at all you people that follow me on Instagram, because I know inevitably one person will just send me a pinged location like 800 miles away. But like within a reasonable distance, if they're like, hey, you want to go fossil hunting? I found this cool whatever. It's like, be there in whatever amount of time. Be there in 5. I don't know. I love the outdoors. It's just part of me. I love the outdoors. I mean,
me too.
Don't get me wrong. The heat kills a lot, but I don't mind sweating. I don't mind getting sunburned. I don't mind drinking water out of a puddle with a life straw. And that's just part of it. That's who I am, and that's why I want to go out. That's the other reason I want to go out in the field. I mean, I love the outdoors. I love the nature. I mean, it's the enjoyable part to me. I mean, maybe whenever I get older and I start uncovering more stuff, maybe I will transition to want to be in a lab more. I don't know. But as of right now, I'm going to school to go be out in the field. So that's what I want to do. I mean, it's that simple.
Usually I found I went on like an 8-week stint when I was, this would have been my second. Yeah, this has been like my second summer with the North Carolina Museum. I was out there for like 8 weeks. And after 8 weeks, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like your hands start like, you can call it the claw because your hands just get like stuck like this, and you gotta like pry them open every morning. You're like, oh my gosh, you're just so burnt.
I didn't know I got arthritis.
Tired. you've lost so much weight because like you can't have like huge meals. You're just kind of eating whatever, and there's like no water. You're sweating it all out.
I already do that.
Yeah. So like by the time 8 weeks is over, I'm like, okay, I could use some air conditioning. I could just use a Gatorade. Like that would be nice. Just some air conditioning. That's it.
But it's still enjoyable. It's fun. I mean,
oh yeah.
Even in just like I've never properly been out in the field. I am going to admit that to everyone, but I mean, granted, I live in South Carolina, so just walking through a shaded creek is nowhere near the middle of the state, or not the state, the country, just like the Midwest. It's nowhere near the same as that. But I've been to Dinosaur National Park. I spent several hours just out in the hot sun. It's not comparable to 8 weeks, but it's still like, and I was out there and I felt alive. It's like,
yeah. That's the best part about going out there. It just feels so rejuvenating because you get to throw your phone away. You get to just be around with your team or your buddies, and you just get to like, all right, we're just going to talk, and we're camping, and you're just away from all the distractions of like society. And it's like a really good reset. Like, okay,
you're hanging out with people like talking and looking and looking for dinosaurs. I mean, that's like any dinosaur nerd, dinosaur geek, whatever you want to call yourself. That's the dream. You want people that can kind of match your knowledge there. I mean, no offense to my brother. He could talk my head off in circles about any war in existence, any human conflict, any bit of history, any corner of the world. He could talk like, I feel, even like any historian's head in a circle. I mean, but if we turn the conversation to dinosaurs, he's like, I don't know what's going on here. It's enjoyable to teach people who don't know. There's also half of you where you're like, I also want to have like a conversation about something a little deeper than the basic of what Dilophosaurus actually look like or something.
Yeah.
I enjoy both sides of it. I mean, it's heavy work. I mean, it's and especially like most of your audience is kids, younger kids. And dinosaurs is not just for kids. I hate it when people say that. With like, I genuinely, like, it hurts me in my core whenever I hear somebody, they're like, man, I can't like dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are for kids. And it's like, you must have had something bad happen to you. It's like
They're
that.
awesome.
That's
so cool. Like everybody loves them. Well, and like a lot of my audience too is, I mean, yeah, I do go to a lot of schools, but like on Instagram, it's a lot of like older people, kind of like my age, like 18 to 35. Like people still love dinosaurs
in that community.
Like, I mean, yeah,
the vast majority of people are definitely not dinosaur oriented, dinosaur knowledge, dinosaur educated, whatever you want to say. I mean, it's like that with literally anything, any niche study. It's like that with anything. Like if you say that for like psychology, the vast majority of the world is in psychology educated. It's very redundant to say. I mean, but granted, psychology it's a very interesting study, but a lot of the concepts just kind of blow me out of the water too. It's
very important. We all have brains. We all need to know how to use them.
But dinosaurs are a bit more cut and dry than you're like, all right, it's a large theropod with this size of this area at this time. We found this large or this small herbivore, this size, this location, this time. General same time period, so they probably hunted each other. It's T-Rex and Triceratops clashed. We can pretty much guarantee that. I mean, there are a lot of evidence that that's a thing. I mean, but saying it that cut and dry is doesn't do it justice. There's a lot more to that. You can look at every individual specimen. It takes a lot of hours, and I would love to have every ounce of paleo knowledge, but I know I won't. But and it is it's grueling work, but it's enjoyable if you want.
I think it's the mystery too that people
Oh,
enjoy.
most definitely.
It's the fact that we don't know everything, or that when you might hear something, there's a good chance that it is new information. Like most people probably, like, you tell someone a fact about tigers, like, oh, I probably heard that, or like, oh, that's really interesting. But like you hear something about like a T-Rex, you're like, oh, like I didn't know that, and it could be like genuinely new. Like, hey, there's a new species of Tyrannosaurus, and you're like, what? I didn't even know that was possible.
It's such a unique, and I feel Tyrannosaurus is I would confidently go out in the world and say T-Rex is the most famous dinosaur. With like Tyrannosaurus Rex is the most famous dinosaur without a shadow of a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And so
everyone knows it,
that makes it such a beautiful. And I hate it too when paleontologists are like, "Oh, you're so basic. What, you like T-Rex?" It's like, yeah. Have you seen it? I mean, why wouldn't you love it? I mean,
everyone both my advisors that I had love T-Rex, so I was like in good company. I was like, they're like, well, people might hate on it, but it's like, it is pretty awesome.
Because it is a basic answer, and that's almost like, okay, well, you study psychology, and what's your favorite part of psychology? And you're like, the human mind. It's people look at it like that, and they're like, oh, well, that's just a basic answer.
Well, but I think the reason why it's so interesting is because, so first off, it was found, and people were like, whoa, this is a huge dinosaur.
It's such a unique dinosaur. I mean,
so unique. And now, like, as we go on, there's nothing that's topped it. Like, every time we find a new dinosaur, it's always referenced to T-Rex. Like, okay, well, how does it stack up to T-Rex? Okay, it's not big enough. It's not, or it might be faster, but it's not as strong. It's not as it, like, T-Rex has always been like the undisputed scariest dinosaur,
tyrant lizard king. We call it the tyrant lizard king. It's the king of dinosaurs. I mean, the lion might be the king of the jungle, but the T-Rex is the king of the Mesozoic. It is a very unique specimen. There's nothing like it. I mean, well, there's nothing like it today. I will say that, because if I say there's nothing like it, you also have like Tarbosaurus, Gorgosaurus, Albertosaurus. I mean, you could just keep listing. Torvosaurus is very similar, but semantics. Yeah. It's hitting somebody over there with a brick with that, but it's nothing like. It's such a unique thing because there's nothing that we've seen like it before. And whenever it was found, it's like, what is this? Why? I mean, and like I said, any person on the street, you walk up and you're like, T-Rex, they'd be like, oh, yeah, the dinosaur, dinosaur, yeah. Except for that one random person who's probably the like, what are those people who don't live without technology?
Luddites, or are you talking about Amish?
The Amish people. I bet if you walked up to them and you're like, "Hey, T-Rex," they'd be like, "Witchcraft?" What? And they're like, "I no," and that's for different circumstances. That's because they don't. That's different circumstances. But still, it's a very unique specimen that, and I Allosaurus is my favorite. It's still fairly famous. Not as famous as T-Rex, by any means, but it's still well known.
Yeah. I think that's based on the fact that it's so much has been found. Like, just like T-Rex, we know a lot about Allosaurus because we found so much.
We call it like the T-Rex of the Jurassic. I mean, it was the top dog of the Jurassic. I mean, it's It was a big boy. I mean, it was
Yeah.
a power. And in my opinion, I still think Allosaurus could cause some damage. I don't think it could win in a fight against a T-Rex, but it could cause some damage
For
without
sure.
a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a huge animal.
And I tend to stay away from T-Rex in my podcast, not because I hate T-Rex, but because there is so much on it out there that I know that if I bring up something T-Rex like, that it will encourage people to still go out and research Tyrannosaurus. And even still, even trying to stay away from it, I have done episodes on T-Rex.
Yeah, it's just so hard to avoid because it is so integral to paleontology.
It's like, I keep referencing like psychology, but it's like trying to take the human mind out of psychology. You lose most of the work. In a lot of what we know on theropods is because of T-Rex.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet, like, even with Allosaurus, I mean, there's so much to Allosaurus that like makes it so unique and different to T-Rex. And even the fact that it came before T-Rex is a little, it does. So it is kind of funny whenever people do compare Allosaurus to T-Rex, and I'm like, wait a minute, technically you should be doing that the other way around, but
yeah,
it's like, no, Allosaurus came first, buddy.
One was a little older.
It is fun, but like, Allosaurus is very unique in the way it's structured. It doesn't have an actual bite the way it uses its jaw. Its hands aren't for slashing, they're for clawing and grabbing. Yet something of that size, it's like doesn't really need to grab as much. It's got a lot of pathology whenever there's damage to the fossils.
Yeah.
It's got like some of the most like pathology examples on it. So it's like these things were very, very violent. I mean, they were actively just killing. I mean, it's so that there is a part of it where it's like, well, since they have that much pathology, was there some sense of community of sport or something to them? I mean, because these are not dumb brutes. They're not just violent killing machines.
Yeah, but I think that they probably did have some type of like, because we know there's a study that came out that showed that T-Rex engaged in face biting. So like they would fight each other and bite their skulls. And we realized that was more reserved for Tyrannosaurs. But maybe, and that's probably might be because they had smaller arms and they could only use their head. But maybe like they just like older theropods like Allosaurus use their arms or use their feet or use something like besides just their head, and that's probably why they have all these pathologies.
And if Allosaurus did truly hunt sauropods, sauropod is deadly. That is deadly game. That is like trying to box an elephant. It's not gonna end well.
It seems like it might have. It had a really large gape. It had like it could open its mouth like 94 degrees.
It could like unhinge its jaw.
It was like perfectly. Its skull was like perfectly designed to just like grab a hold of something big, and then just pull back, just rip.
And even the teeth aren't meant for just like biting and holding on. It's meant for just tearing flesh away. It's a very, very, very violent, very gory, very gruesome scene, but it's so unique at the same time. That's part of my like wonder and love with Allosaurus. The other part is thanks to Walking with Dinosaurs, the Ballad of Big Al. That was one of my first. That was my first exposure to the Walking with Dinosaurs series.
Oh, really?
It was so that, and it wasn't my first exposure to dinosaurs because as a kid, like dinosaurs they were kind of everywhere for me, but it was the first thing that really grabbed my attention with dinosaurs. Then there was Jurassic Park, then there was the rest of Walking Dinosaurs and the rest of Jurassic Park. So Allosaurus has a very special place in my heart because it really was something that got me into the paleo world. But like other than, and that's why I don't want to say focus on the Morrison Formation, but I really want to go to the Morrison Formation and just excavate everything. Just dig up all of Utah and Colorado. Just flatten it all.
It's a really cool spot to dig, and there are like so many unique dinosaurs.
Oh yeah,
from that like time period.
Stegosauri. There were like ankylosaur-like dinosaurs in that time period. I mean, it's sauropods weren't in North America as much during the Cretaceous, but they were still around. They were in like the southern parts of North America. They were in South America. I don't know about Europe, Asia, and Africa, and Australia.
They were in
as much
Asia. They were definitely in Asia. There were some in Africa. As far as just like the fossil record in Africa is not really well known, so like we can't say like there was none there. We just don't know for sure. Definitely South America and Asia. There was a lot of titanosaurs.
Titanosaurs.
Not very diverse, but it was titanosaurs.
They stopped being sauropods and became titanosaurs. They just kept getting bigger, which is a very interesting defense strategy.
Yeah,
just be the biggest thing and nothing will mess with you.
Just don't stop growing. Just keep getting bigger. Just get bigger.
I mean, it's not like an outlandish thing. I mean, like gorillas kind of do that. I mean, elephants do that. They tend to mates tend to choose the biggest, strongest mate. So it's like, all right, well, only the big ones will get to spread their genes, and then the offspring will get bigger. And it's like, it's not outlandish to think that sauropods would do the same. I mean,
yeah, it's way easier than developing body armor.
Definitely, sauropods are not the brightest of dinosaurs, but it doesn't take a genius to realize that you're bigger than somebody.
Yeah,
and that is definitely one of the big reasons I feel like they were not like the big healthy bull. Diplodocus was not actively hunted. Or if it was, there was something deadly that we have not found yet.
Yeah.
That
was their defense mechanism. Like, I just have to be bigger than the predator because you just got to scare them off.
Because T-Rex, even Edmontosaurus was like one-on-one T-Rex. I'll give T-Rex could take down Edmontosaurus, but it was never one-on-one. Edmontosaurus would live in a huge herd. They live in huge herds. So if it went after one of the ones in the middle of the herd, the rest of the herd's going to trample the T-Rex. And then it's just like, well, bye-bye, Rex. It's like, and that is one of my fascinations with Allosaurus, that even though it is like smaller, significantly, noticeably smaller than T-Rex, it still hunted stuff bigger than what T-Rex was hunted. It's kind of insane. It
really is.
It's kind of like orcas with like other whales. It reminds me a lot of that, where like a sauropod would be like a humpback whale, and then the Allosaurus would be like the orca.
Mm-hmm.
It's and then that, like, on top of it, like theropod packs. It's like, well, did Allosaurus hunt in groups? Did it hunt alone? And then again, that also goes all the way back to like individuals. I mean, some probably preferred to be alone. Some probably preferred to be in groups. I mean, it's probably the same with Rexes. I mean, there's some that were probably like, okay, I'd rather not have another Rex because I don't feel like sharing food. And then the other ones are like, okay, well, we can take down more. We can take down bigger prey if there's more than one.
Yeah. It's so hard to know, like, if they actually did hunt in groups or not. I mean, the fact that sauropods are so big, I guess would suggest that there's so much food that like it is kind of like, it could definitely feed multiple individuals. So there is like an incentive of like, hey, if we band together, we could take this down. But yeah, we'd have no idea if like that was actually possible, if they had that kind of social awareness.
And that's something else. T-Rex they were I'm not gonna say geniuses, because that's not, they're not like dolphin or primate, but they were still fairly intelligent creatures.
They were intelligent just in their own way. Like
they were
I don't know if you saw that study that came out where someone did say that they were like as smart as primates based on like their neuron count.
I've heard like EQ scales, which is like brain to body ratio, and they have like a huge brain for their body, but that doesn't, having a big brain doesn't necessarily make you intelligent. It's very difficult to truly know. I mean, because primates, they use tools. They have, we can visibly observe them. They've used like tools. You can teach them things. You can, I mean, they're very complicated with vocalization. Like this.
That's what this other study was suggesting, is that T-Rex would use tools. Like they were smart because they had 4 billion neurons in their brain, that they were, or that's their estimated amount of neurons, is that they'd be smart enough to use tools, which I don't know if I believe that. That's what this study was saying, but they were like, yeah, it had so many neurons. It was like as smart as a baboon or a primate. And it was, if it was as smart as a primate, then maybe it used tools and passed down knowledge. But I don't know if I'd quite agree with that. I think it was more
parental. I like to think that T-Rex was very parentally there. I do think that they cared for their young. So it's not out of the question that like a mama Rex would teach the baby Rexes that like, okay, well, that you see this ankylosaurus here, don't stand behind it, you'll die.
Yeah.
Okay, don't attack it from this angle because of XYZ. Try to flip it over or something. Just like teaching them how to hunt, things like that. That's not an outlandish idea. I mean, it's actually very observable in like animals in general. I mean, but using tools, I don't really know what they would use.
I don't know either. Somebody did a picture, again, really cool image of like a T-Rex taking a tree log and like jamming it under an ankylosaur and like using that as like a lever to like flip it over.
Maybe, possibly, maybe it was smart enough to like drop something on the ankylosaur to like break open its armor or break part of it so it could actually. But it also goes back to like, okay, well, this thing has an insane bite force. Why would it need to do that?
Yeah,
it could 100% bite through the osteoderms of ankylosaurs. It is a very unique idea, and maybe certain like raptors and dromaeosaurs, maybe since they were intelligent too, they probably could use. And granted, like nowadays, there's more kind of known things, I guess. Like you can give an elephant a paintbrush, and if maybe it paints. I mean, I don't think raptors had paintbrushes. I'm not gonna say that.
Yeah.
That'd be very interesting and very concerning whenever we find dinosaur cave art. But
yeah.
but I mean, to say that maybe they didn't like drag the prey into a tree like a jaguar and to keep it away from like scavengers on the ground or something like that. It's not like out of the question that they were intelligent enough to preserve food, to throw rocks or sticks or something. I mean, it's not like a crazy idea.
Yeah, I think they use their intelligence in different ways than we would. Like, I don't think they used it in complex thinking, like using tools and passing down knowledge.
No.
I think they just had like a really developed senses. Like the olfactory like lobes of a T-Rex are so developed. Like it could smell things from miles away. And it's like
They have
really good
impeccable
vision,
eyesight.
have really good hearing. Like, so it was just, I think it was just intelligent in the way that an animal needs to be intelligent. Like it just was able to navigate its environment extremely well, and it could hunt down prey really well. It could understand like just the environment and just pick up on things much easier.
Intelligence is very relative,
Yeah,
to an extent, because for humans it's like, okay, we've managed to leave the planet. That is a very intellectual. I mean, that's very. It takes a lot of intelligence to do that. But like, I've never seen a tiger use a spear, but we've seen monkeys drive cars. It's like, okay, but like, even with Smilodon, there has to be some sense of intelligence to know to use its fangs to like aim for the jugular, to like aim for the throat. So it's like, okay, well, it's clearly not a dumb creature because it's not just using its very fragile like fangs to bite the skull of a Galiptodon. It's not. It's like, okay, it knows not to do that. So it's there's some sense of intelligence there.
Yeah, it has like physical intelligence. It knows its body well enough to know how to use it to take down prey.
And I mean, so it's not like a ridiculous idea to assume like, okay, well, T-Rex knew that it had a very powerful bite force and how to use it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like an outlandish idea for physical intelligence to be brought about in these creatures. I mean, it's and there are some like Stegosaurus where it's like, okay, this thing had a smaller brain. What's going on there?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I don't really know why. It probably just didn't need it. Like as far as its brain, it probably just was just focused. Its brain was just big enough to know how to eat food, how to hit something, hit an Allosaurus if it came close. That was really it. It lived a very simple life.
Very, very simple. I mean, it's not, but that also doesn't mean that Stegosaurus is a dumb animal. I mean, it's
yeah.
Maybe they showed intelligence in other ways. Maybe they knew how to use their tail to like uproot plants to eat them easier or something. I don't know. I mean, it's and that would be a very interesting theory, but intelligence is relative.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we have a warped, well, I wouldn't say warped. Let me back that up. We have a bias because we use our brain and our intelligence in such unique ways. I mean, mostly our brain is just prefrontal cortex, or like it's just all that one part. The actual reptilian part of our brain, which probably T-Rex is mostly, it's like a little tiny bit of our brain. Like we're so totally different.
And I mean, as humans, we look at IQ. Obviously, we have. I've never seen a whale build a skyscraper.
Yeah.
So you do have like a sense. It's like, okay, well, we are smart enough we're smarter than whales because, I mean, look at all of the country, like everything that humans have, but that doesn't make whales dumb. That whole, I mean, if you look at IQ, yeah, humans are we're top dogs. We are like the smartest thing on the planet. But if you look at like EQ, like brain size the body, that's like sperm whales and orcas. They heavily outweigh us. I mean, but they're also so unique, and they also show like great signs of intelligence. Like orcas have recently started, like multiple have started attacking like the propellers on boats to stop them from being able to like turn and move, and they're teaching it to other orcas to do that. And they know, like, okay, well, here's this humpback whale, attack the fins and the tail, it's immobilized, it can't go anywhere, easy feeding. It's they know this kind of, and they have very complex sense of like society, and they have been like witnessed mourning the loss of like fellow orcas. I mean, it's and for some reason they know to target the great white shark's liver for whatever reason, because it tastes good.
Yeah, it's so interesting. They just know that.
So I mean, it's not out of the question that there was a intelligent dinosaur. I mean, maybe not like mosasaur for like the aquatic realm, for like aquatic reptiles, but there could have possibly been like that dolphin niche that was filled in. I mean,
like that really intelligent, it just couldn't use tools, it couldn't do any of that stuff. It was just a really smart, and it probably had some type of social connection to other dinosaurs.
It's not like a weird idea for like a T-Rex to have like complex social structures. Maybe not T-Rex specifically, but like Albertosaurus.
Dinosaur similar to it.
What was that?
Just a dinosaur similar to it might have been able to do something like that.
Oh yeah, no, like Albertosaurus definitely lived at least in packs. I mean, and it's a very complex idea that it without the proper fossil records, we cannot prove nor deny it. Like lack of evidence isn't. It isn't like, okay, well, this didn't happen.
Yeah.
Just because
there's known unknowns and there are unknown unknowns.
I mean, significant lack of evidence to a point, then eventually it's like, okay, well, maybe there weren't complex social structures, but like lack of understanding, lack of evidence doesn't mean lack of existence. It is a very, and I mean, dinosaurs come in every shape and size.
Mm-hmm.
It's from the craziest Kentrosaurus to Suchomimus. It is a very, very unique, and there's nothing like them around today. I mean, we say like birds and crocodiles and turtles and whatever, but
they're just the closest. They're not like exact.
A bald eagle is still not a velociraptor.
No.
It may be similar, but it's not a velociraptor. It's a very, very diverse, very unique, very interesting world.
Yeah, and long lasting. I mean, we've had so many different types of animals in so many different body forms that have just like evolved throughout the time, sometimes multiple times. So yeah, it's just a really interesting science experiment.
It's honestly like miraculous that they even came to exist, and insects didn't rule the world or something crazy. I mean, and insects did rule the world for a lot of the time. I mean, there was a time before dinosaurs where there were massive insects.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't live in that time.
Oh God, no.
With huge, like giant centipedes the size of like buses, and like
I'm good. I'll pass.
Oh, what are those? Like Meganura, like those bald eagle sized or albatross sized dragonflies? Like, yeah, no, thank you.
That is the one I would be okay with.
Oh no, I hate bugs.
I don't like bugs either.
I hate it so much. The fact that there's like those giant things walking around. I could barely handle like cockroaches, spiders. Oh my gosh, they just
that reminds me of the prehistoric park where he's going back in time to get the big insects, and he brought somebody with him, and they're like putting up mosquito nets, and he's like, "What are you doing? You don't need those. Those haven't even evolved yet. They don't even exist."
Yeah,
that is the one thing I wouldn't miss. Mosquitoes. I still don't know why they exist.
They're awful.
I don't like them.
Yeah, they're not good. I'm gonna be glad when summer's over and we can get through, because you live in South Carolina, so mosquito season right now. I'm done with it.
I live next to like a small body of water, so we get a lot of. It's painful. It's you walk outside in like shorts and your legs are just.
You look down, walk inside. I'm like, why am I so itchy? And you're like, oh, I've just been eaten alive by these things.
You look down and you see like 8 of them down your leg, down each leg. You're like, huh, okay. You're like, I'm going back inside for a bit.
Yeah.
But where was I going with that? It is. I mean, even like plants, like plant wise, berries, fruits. Those are relatively new. Grass is really, really new.
Yeah.
Grasshoppers existed before grass, which is
really interesting to think about.
So are they just hoppers, or are they
still
they
were just hoppers. They were dirt hoppers.
So I saw something where it was like, hey, I'm grass. I newly evolved, and it like cuts over into like a grasshopper. He's like, I'm gonna hop you. I'm gonna hop the crap out of you. It's like, what? It's like, so are they still grasshoppers, or are they just? I mean, that's such a unique thing? I mean,
I don't know.
And grass is a very unique plant. I mean, we take it for granted because you walk outside and you see thousands of acres of grass and whatnot, but release a triceratops in a field, it's not going to be able to eat. It doesn't know what grass is.
Yeah, we'll have no idea.
It probably won't be able to digest grass. I won't say that for a fact because I don't know how that quite works. I mean,
I think it might, just because that those dental batteries were so like advanced. Like it would considering it would be a lot of plant material.
If it was eating like ferns in sea whatever, like seaweed and whatever it could find in whatever swamp, grass wouldn't really be an issue. But would it know to actively graze on like grass like that? I think not.
I don't know.
I don't think. I mean, it maybe the only thing would be to like bring a triceratops back and see what it does to grass, but I the same way that like a triceratops doesn't actively try to eat leaves out of a tree, I feel like it would probably be confused by grass.
Yeah, it might be. We'll never know.
I mean,
unfortunately.
That is, you say that somebody will make a Jurassic Park, maybe not in our lifetime, and
dude, I mean, the science is there. Like they've got that. They did that study where they could like change the genomes of birds back to dinosaurs. So
they had the
science
T-Rex
there.
Chicken.
The what?
The T-Rex chicken.
Yes, the T-Rex chicken. The chicken source. It's possible. I feel like in the next 50 years, someone's going to do it. I mean, they're already trying to recreate the woolly mammoth, and it's it's not a pipe dream. Like it's actually going to happen. They're going to bring back woolly mammoths and dodo birds. So
dodo birds. I mean, dodo birds went extinct because like people hunted them. That's not even like a insane thing. I mean,
yeah,
they were around.
So they just want to bring it back because they're like, because we can.
When did dodos go extinct?
Oh, I don't even know. I feel like they went extinct in like I saw a picture of like a pirate killing a dodo bird, so they had to have been around whenever that was. Whenever pirates were a thing.
1681.
1681. So there you go. So they're pretty recent. Like
Portuguese sailors, and the dodo, a flightless bird, was first spotted in the 1500s by Portuguese sailors and disappeared by 1681. Hey, it only took 181 years to kill them all off, so it's not.
Yeah. Isn't that so crazy that like that's considered like an old animal? It was around like 1600s.
We had guns when that thing existed.
Yeah, we had guns and like ships at that point. It's not that old of an animal.
I'm sure we still have like feathers in genetic material. That honestly, that is probably one of the animals that we know the most about. That we could correctly reconstruct just because there were humans who saw it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's. I could say, well, I mean, mammoths are fairly easy to reconstruct. Woolly rhinoceros, and that's because we have like literal frozen samples of them. Yeah. So we kind of know what we're looking at. But I feel dodo is still way more accurate. Just I mean, it went extinct only like 500 years ago.
Yeah, like we have like actual pictures.
Only 500 years. But they're older than America.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like that's such
but they're still younger than they went extinct after Rome. So it's like, oh my god, like they're still pretty recent.
Mammoths went extinct after Egypt.
Yeah.
Like Egypt was a country, was a thing. I think it was the pyramids. Like they were building the pyramids, there were still mammoths.
I think that's our good litmus test for if we could bring something back. If there were countries around when this animal lived, we can bring it back.
It's granted, I don't know how good the genetic material from those mammoths were because it was a small population on an island. So I'm sure there was a lot of inbreeding between the small population. So I'm sure there was a lot of genetic, and I would be interested to actually go to that island and dig up these mammoth remains to see if there's like genetic problems with the creatures because it was such a small population.
Yeah, it is interesting. But yeah, you should check out that It's Colossal. I think the company is called It's Colossal, and they're the ones that are going to be bringing back woolly mammoths. Apparently, they got it down. Like they
release them into Siberia.
I guess, yeah. Like they got all those.
Maybe not Siberia. Maybe we'll just use Canada.
Yeah,
but they were actually like mammoths and woolly rhinoceros and all those amazing creatures that came across the land bridge. They are. It is so crazy that they were so crucial to the ecosystem that the steppe was actually way more inhabitable. Like, I mean, they carry seeds. Their doo-doo fertilizes everything. I mean, it made the steppe like, I don't want to say cleaner. I don't really know what the correct terminology would be, but like there was plant life there. It was less more habitable. More habitable. I mean, so to release like a Siberian unicorn back into Siberia, very fitting, would be perfect. It would fit the name, and inevitably probably some dude would see it and then freak out. But
yeah,
I mean, it also it is a crazy thing. I mean, cloning I have seen that like cloning a mammoth from nothing would be very, very, very difficult, nearly impossible.
Yeah, it probably would be.
Selective breeding through elephants to get not a official woolly mammoth. It wouldn't be officially a woolly mammoth, but it would be close enough to a woolly mammoth that it you might as well call it one.
Yeah.
To get that, I mean that's how you would have to do it. You'd have to just selectively breed elephants, which is an insane job. That's somebody's. They're like, you know what? Let's bring back an animal by selectively breeding this one. It's like,
yeah, that'd be a lot of work. It'd be a lot of work to like know the exact way to breed it into something to an like that, like a prehistoric animal.
Or you would have to, like, while it's developing in like elephant's womb, you'd have to like go in and like unlock all the like locked genetics to give it hairier and bigger tusks and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would be curious on how they actually interact with elephants, because Prehistoric Park did that, where they're like, okay, well, they have this woolly mammoth and it interacts with elephants, but it's like, granted that is still a little bit fiction that it was Prehistoric Park. So I would love to see how, like, if the elephants would be like, there's something wrong with that thing, that there's something
recognize that elephant,
or
it probably would interact with it in the same way that like African elephants might interact with an Asian elephant at a zoo. Like they probably might recognize it, but they probably are like, that's just a little different than me.
I feel like it would be able to communicate to them in some form or fashion. So
yeah,
because they're I mean, look at an elephant, look at a mammoth. I mean, it's not like a insane difference. They're very similar. It's what, longer tusks and fur. I mean, it's not like mammoths had like sharp teeth and had wings or something. It's not. If they did, that would be very, very weird.
Yeah,
very weird.
It would be strange.
But I mean, it's not an outlandish thing. I mean, and megafauna is not as prevalent as it was, and humans have become the asteroid, if you will, the asteroid for megafauna. But there are a lot of species that are extinct that, I mean, there's a whole joke in Jurassic Park where he's like, if I brought condors back and had condors on this island, you wouldn't complain. And that there is a little bit of that where it's like, okay, well, humans are the reason that condors are dead. I mean, they don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
To bring them back, it's not like it would disrupt the eco. I mean, well, actually, I say that, but
it might.
It might, because the ecosystem has kind of altered because condors don't exist anymore, that other things have had to fill that.
It's already moved on from that, and
so,
it would be
if you were
like an invasive species
condor,
at that point.
You would have to very slowly reintroduce them back into an ecosystem.
Yeah.
Or they would just rip it apart. I mean, it would just be pythons in Florida. It's
yeah.
I mean, it's
a really good example.
Granted, if we brought something like Titanoboa back,
oh man, no, shut it down. We got to have like some ground rules when we're bringing back these animals. Can't be bringing back these giant snakes. Can't be bringing back giant bugs. Let's just stick to elephants.
Just Jurassic Park it. Just get an island. You know what? Everybody in Hawaii has to come on the mainland. We're just going to turn all of Hawaii into Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
That
each
would be
island's
fun.
Gonna have like a specific set of dinosaurs to it.
Each one is a like a time block. Like it's like, all right, this is the Cretaceous island. This one's the Jurassic island. This one's the Triassic island. I do find it funny though that it is Jurassic Park, but then like the vast majority of everything in it is from the Cretaceous period.
I wonder if they like workshop that. They're like, oh, we're gonna call it Cretaceous Park, and they're like, no, that doesn't have the same.
That doesn't sound right.
You gotta do something else.
The next guy's like, Triassic Park. They're like, you're fired.
No, that one doesn't work either. We're like, well, we're close. We're like Jurassic.
The other guy's like shaking and sweating in his seat. He's like, Jurassic Park. They're like, yes, you deserve a raise.
Yeah.
It's like, although Camp Cretaceous works real well. That
yeah, it's a nice little alliteration.
Now all they are missing is something with Triassic. So you'd have to think of something.
The next show they're gonna put out is like Triassic something. Like I don't even know. Like
Triassic territory.
There you go.
It's just like a knockoff Jurassic Park. That would be funny though, if in like the next season of Camp Cretaceous, there's just some dude who's like, "Welcome to Triassic territory," and they're like, "You're an idiot. Don't do
this
this.
is awful. That's not even a real dinosaur."
He's like, "I'm sorry, the marketing sucks." But like,
I had a shoestring budget. I couldn't put this together. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's like, they gave me 2 weeks, and this is all I couldn't use Jurassic Park. It's all I could come up with.
Yeah.
Although Jurassic Park, I mean, there's I love it. I mean, there's a lot you can do with it. There's a lot that they're going into, and Dominion could have been better. Sorry, don't want to see a plot about a bunch of giant locusts when there's dinosaurs on the mainland, but
yeah,
but it's still I still love it. It's still there. I mean, and it opens up a pathway to other films, other stories, other things, and it keeps bringing people into the world of paleo.
Yeah,
and puts people into the field to go find stuff. I mean, and I am thankful to Jurassic World. Of course, they had Triceratops and T-Rex and Ankylosaurus and all that in there. They had all this, but they also use other dinosaurs that aren't as well known. They have like Pyroraptor and Gigantosaurus and Dreadnoughtus. I mean, they're even using like Kintrosaurus and other things. They're using other, I don't want to say lesser known, but like the lesser known relative to these famous dinosaurs. Because I'm sure they could milk Triceratops and Stegosaurus for another 6 or 8 films, but it's like, okay, well, we've seen Triceratops and Stegosaurus so many times, but you're like, all right, well, here's Centrosaurus and Kintrosaurus. You're like, okay, what we got going on here?
Yeah,
it's a very, I mean,
talk about a new dinosaur. It's always something new. It shakes up the show. It shakes up the movie. Also, like merchandise. Obviously, they gotta sell toys, so
even with
bring up another new dinosaur to make a toy out of.
I mean, even with Camp Cretaceous, they had like Becklea spinax.
Yeah,
and I was talking to somebody who their whole thing isn't necessarily paleontology, but it's the Jurassic franchise, and it's like I. All right, sorry guys, again, more technical difficulties. It's acting all funky again. But I guess since we gotta start getting going a little bit soon. You said you've been out in the field. Final part, I guess. You have any fun stories? Anything you want to talk about? Any discoveries you want to mention? Any talk about things you found?
I mean, there's so much to talk about from the field, but I think one thing that's kind of ties into right now is that there was a new dinosaur that was discovered called Fauna, and it was found by this person that I actually worked with at where it was described by this guy, Haviv Avrahami. He works at the North Carolina Museum of History, and on one of my digs, I actually got to go out and find one of these fossils of Fauna. So it's That's this cool. Little dinosaur. It's from this family called the Orodromines, which they are, for those who don't know, it's part of the ornithopods. So like the beak crested and duck-billed dinosaurs, it's in that family. The smaller little family is the Orodromines. And what his research is when we found this, we were trying to look around because he had this idea that maybe these things burrowed. Like they were small enough. They had like specialized arms. He's like, maybe these things burrowed. So we dug this thing up. And this thing was like, we found like a pretty like decent skeleton of it. Like we found from like the skull down to like the tail, not complete, but like pretty much like a partial skeleton from head to tail.
Articulated skeleton. I mean,
it was really cool. Yeah, it was like this massive block, pulled it out of the ground. And yeah, when he brought it back, he looked at this skeleton, a bunch of other skeletons that he found from Utah before I joined the team. And yeah, he cut it open and they seemed that these things burrowed because it had like stress fracture, or it had like a special type of like growth that's similar to like armadillos and aardvarks, like digging animals. So we think that this animal was a burrowing, maybe not like super deep like a mole, but like some type of
get
like
under the ground,
fossorial animal.
That is a very unique dinosaur. I mean, that's a very unique thing in general. Not a lot of animals burrow like that. So I mean,
and kudos to him for figuring that out, because it kind of was like a speculative thing based on what he was telling me. Is like, we don't really know for sure. It's kind of like a hunch that people have had that these types of animals burrowed, and he's like, I'm going to test it. So that was part of his dissertation, was testing that hypothesis. It panned out.
That is cool. That is to be able to like figure that out and be like, okay, this dinosaur was a burrower. I mean, that is a very unique thing to be able to figure out.
Yeah.
So I guess you got to get going soon. So I'll let you go, and I'll close everything out and do the rest.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on, man. It's very special to me to get people like you that enjoy this study or this field of science on the show. It makes the little boy in me real happy just to be able to speak to like a proper paleontologist.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, I love doing this kind of stuff. So I really appreciate you bringing me on.
And if you ever want to come back on, just shoot me a text and we'll work out a time. I mean,
there you go. All right.
So if you got to go, you got to go, and I'll see you.
All right. See ya.
See ya. That was the Daily Dino Guy. Go check out his Instagram. He has a lot of amazing content on there. Love the dude. I'm really glad I could actually get him on the show. He's real awesome. I cherish that a lot. That is but if you want more from me, go check out my Instagram, Prehistoric Life Podcast. You can see all the additional content I post on there. Whenever I go on fossil digs, things like that, whenever I go do whatever, whenever I make reels, whatever, I post them there. If you want my content earlier than everywhere else, Monday, Wednesday, I post on YouTube. Tends to be a little bit earlier than that. And if you want all of my content in one place, just check out my podcast or my website. Yeah, if you want all my content, check out my podcast. From there, you can get my YouTube and my Instagram, and each individual block is an episode. But yeah, but before we leave, a quick word from our sponsors. So
thanks, Podcast Eric. Now let's talk about today's sponsor, Dinosaur Trips. If you love looking at these amazing creatures that I show you, and even talking about these amazing creatures that I talk about, and you want to go see them in real life, I heavily suggest you look at Dinosaur Trips. Dinosaur Trips, created by Zach, gives you behind-the-scenes in-look at museums, and he even takes people out to digs. So if you sound interested in that, go to www.dinosaurtrips.com and tell them that Prehistoric Life sent you, and they will give you $250 off your tickets. And here's their Instagram if you're interested in giving them a follow.
All right, well, thank you all for tuning in and listening. I'm your host, Eric Crawford, signing off. This has been Prehistoric Life Podcast, and remember, keep it prehistoric. Goodbye.